Hey, what's going on, guys? It's Tex. Thanks for joining me today. It is Monday, September 16, 2019. So I want to break down a trade that I took here on Netflix today. Really good setup. Had to be patient for it, but very happy with the way that it played out. And as of now, the market is closed and I'm actually swinging just a few shares. I've just got some lotto shares running on this trade. It's not often I swing something, but just figured I'd give it a go. I've already paid myself nicely on this trade, so I don't really, I'm not really attached to the outcome. If we get a gap up tomorrow, great. If not, then that's all right. So before we break down the trade here on Netflix, it should be noted that the futures Sunday night opened with a gap down, and the gap down is notable because of the fact that we have been trading inside of this channel for quite a while now. I did post about that. When we zoom in on this on our 30-minute chart, here's our gap down, and we are underneath of that channel now. So you'll notice that we actually came up into a fib projection level I have here about 3,000 and rejected. Came down to my next level here perfectly at 29.85 and have since held that. Basically grinded up in the overnight session. In the regular session here, very whipsaw action. This is very indicative of a market that's indecisive. And it makes sense because we are heading into a Fed announcement this week, and I do believe the market's going to be in a holding pattern until that announcement comes out, at which point we'll have to see if the market decides to really respond to that, to the upside or the downside. Either way, I think that probably tomorrow is going to be more of today. Unless Trump comes out and tweets something, who knows? But this holding pattern, this real indecisive kind of whipsaw action could very easily continue tomorrow. So anytime you have action like that in the market, it's very important that you take that into consideration before you trade anything. It generally means you need to be very patient and very selective with the trades that you take. And ideally wait for confirmation. So I was very patient this morning. I actually didn't initiate a trade until later in the morning, and it ended up being on Netflix. So one of the things that I posted in the chat room at Livestream Trading was, I've been watching Netflix very closely for a little bit now. It's obviously very beaten down. We had this big gap down after their last earnings. We traded up a little bit higher, but we still have this unfilled gap above us. Now, obviously, this gap is very much out of play at this point in time. I'm basically watching this downward wedge that we're trading in at this point in time. So if we start to break out of this trend here, I do believe that there is potential for an explosive move higher, courtesy of some short squeeze, because you can just see the shorts accumulated in Netflix. It's just very beaten down. So if we start to break this trend, there could be a good swing trade in this. Now, it is going to be market dependent. If the market tanks after the Fed announcement, it's certainly not going to let Netflix break out, or at least I wouldn't expect it to. But if the market ends up holding up and gives Netflix a shot to break out of this with some short squeeze coming in, we could get a nice trade to the upside, probably targeting these highs. I also like that we've got that 200 SMA sitting up there as well, right about that area. And then beyond that, a gap fill. Now, I don't know if we'd get that done, but certainly a break of this trend could see us make a move higher here on Netflix. We'll see. It could just as easily continue trading down lower and get more tighter into this wedge before the break comes. So the only reason that I mentioned that is because today we were interacting with that trend line, the top part of the wedge. So go to our 1-minute chart. Let's break down the trade that I took on Netflix this morning. Again, just being very patient this morning. Watched Netflix rip out of the gate into the top part of our wedge here. Now, again, today, with the market being indecisive heading into a Fed rate cut decision this week, really was not expecting Netflix to break out today, but the fact that we did get above that trend line was notable. However, we did have our previous high of day, this red dashed line sitting just overhead, so not an ideal setup for a breakout. And also not a setup that I much liked for a short. I do love shorting things into previous high of day. It's one of my favorite setups, but this particular setup was not one I liked because we had that trend line sitting here, so not much to work with. Furthermore, it's just kind of messy up here. There's some of the candles closed above the previous high of day. Very whipsaw up here, as you can see. Technically putting in a higher high right here, so no real lower high confirmation for a short off of that previous high of day, although it did end up working out. It just wasn't a trade I was interested in. We did put in a lower high here that you could have shorted right off that trend line, and obviously that worked out beautifully, but just wasn't something I was interested in, so I sat tight again, just waiting for the charts to develop and for a setup that I liked. So as Netflix sold off, I put a trend line on from high of day. I drew it from high of day, anchoring it to this candle here. And that gave us a nice clean downtrend to work with. So as it was selling off, I really did like the idea of us coming into the previous low of day, possibly holding this green dashed line. But again, wanting to wait for confirmation, I did not take it on our first test of the previous low of day. I watched it retrace up into our trend line. We break the trend line, but now what I want to see is pull back and test the trend line, hold as support. Beautiful test of that right here on this candle. Absolutely perfect into the trend line. Held as support, lifted right back up above our previous low of day. So as soon as that test occurred, we got this beautiful consolidation pattern holding the previous low of day to the penny. And now I'm very, very interested in this trade to the long side. I end up initiating the position on this candle right there as we opened up and pulled back a little bit. I pulled the trigger here at 290.29, which is right about here, almost right at the bottom of that candle. The low of that candle was at 290.24. So really great fill on that. Clearly risking right under our low of day here, so about 50-cent risk on the trade. Ideal target being VWAP. We're looking at about a 3-point reward on the trade. So I love the risk reward on this trade. I love the confirmation of a trend hold, low of day hold, almost like a double bottom. A clear trigger point here for shorts to get out of the trade as we got this trend break with support holding. So you've got shorts covering their position, longs kind of chasing, pushing us up here. You'll notice that I took some position off here at 291.23 and 291.25, locking in almost a point per share. The reason for that is because that was right as we were coming up into our pre-market open price, which we can see we struggled with throughout this area. So just ahead of that, right here is when I started to take some of my position off, making sure I locked in a green trade on this indecisive day in the market. No need to let money slip through your fingers when the market's very whipsaw, like I said. So as we continue to push up, I took some more profit into 291.84 because we got this really nice move higher. The reason I took some there is because that was right as we were coming into that daily 9 EMA, this purple line, which was actually a little bit lower this morning. So as we were pushing up right here in this area, I'm taking some more profit in case we fail that daily 9 EMA. And obviously, because we've made this nice little move up, it made sense that Netflix might want to have a little pullback, maybe set in a lower high and then push back up. Or if the lower high failed, at least I locked in a nice profitable trade. So at this point, sitting tight and holding my last position for VWAP. Unfortunately, you'll notice that we didn't quite get up to VWAP. We actually put in a little bit of a lower high right here. So I put a stop in at break even and said, you know, I'm just going to leave it alone and see what happens. But as we were pulling back here, I started thinking, I don't think it's going to work. But I just left my stop at break even and headed to lunch and just let it do its thing. Well, while I was gone at lunch, we had this huge volume come in. You can see here, which gave us this huge push up right here, well over VWAP through the previous close. Was up about 4.5 points on the trade here, but I was gone. I was gone at lunch. Came back and saw that and thought, well, man, Netflix is actually looking pretty good. So I decided instead of taking profit, I would move my stop from break even, turn it into a trailing stop, and moved it up to our daily 9 EMA. Made sure that I locked in some nice profit on the last piece in case we broke down below that. Almost got stopped out right here, but we held above my trailing stop and pushed back up here. Put in a new high right here at was about 5 points per share up roughly here, just under the top of the wedge and still sitting tight. So as we were coming here in the close, you know, I kind of debated just taking profit on that last piece, but it's not often that I get the opportunity to swing trade something. So I just decided, you know what, I've only got these lotto shares running. I'm just going to swing trade this overnight and see what happens. You know, if we get a little bit of a gap up, great. If we gap down, no big deal. It's I'm not really concerned what happens with these last shares. I've paid myself nicely on just this small move here and locked in a nice green day. So it's why not? Just see what happens. So with that said, guys, I hope you found the video helpful and enjoyable as usual. I hope you guys had a great day trading. Thanks as always for watching, and we will catch you in the next one. See ya.